Have at this particular quarter course mark in the race. So it's over to you, Rick.
Thanks very much, Dave. And it looks like the Smith-Stockley crew right now, once again in the Viking, building up half a boat lead right now from the vantage point, almost at the midway point, right here at Kitty Vitty Lake. Second place, once again in the Blue Peter, is the NAFAC crew, and a distant third at this time is the crew from Bell Island. Smith-Stockley building up a pretty good lead right now past the boys here from my vantage point at Pondside at Kitty Vitty. Looks like it's going to be a pretty good race. We'll be back in just a moment with this race, the General Workers race, and more coverage from Pondside from the 155th running of the St. John's Regatta.
I'm in love with Mary Brown. Mary Brown's got the best legs in town.
Once again at Pondside at Kitty Vitty Lake, this is the General Workers race, and Smith-Stockley being challenged right now by NAFAC in the Blue Peter. Smith-Stockley in the Viking right now, and once again a distant third is Bell Island. Only a three-boat race, so to speak, in the second race of the day. And the competition for this one is certainly the best of the day after only two races once again, but Smith-Stockley being challenged very well by NAFAC from Argentia. And from this vantage point right now at the midway point at Pondside, it's going to be a two-crew race, and it's once again very, very, very close right now. I'm sure Dave Wheeler will have a better vantage point as they make the all-important turn coming around in just a few moments' time. Difficult from this angle. I'd have to give the edge to Smith-Stockley, with NAFAC a very, very close second, Bell Island third right now. And Dave, hopefully from your angle, you can get a better vantage point of what's going on with the race right now. It's still very close.
Yeah, it looks like a definite lead there for Smith-Stockley from my vantage point right now. As they approach the boys, we'll take a quick break and return with VOCM's coverage of Regatta 81.
At the Regatta this year, you'll notice the beautiful array of colors worn by the teams, as well as the colorful crowd who'll be on hand for this proud and happy event. And too, Lighting World on Black Marsh Road at Bennett Avenue would like you to view their complete line of lighting fixtures, just perfect for making the colors in your home show true. The Lighting World has the finest selection of lighting fixtures in all of Newfoundland. So treat yourself to a wonderful time at the Regatta and your home to the finest in lighting from the Lighting World, Black Marsh Road at Bennett Avenue.
Okay, VOCM's coverage of the General Workers race continues now. The Smith-Stockley crew and the Viking on stake 4 have already turned the boys, and those boys have done that before because they just slipped right around there. The NAFAC crew and the Blue Peter having some difficulty, a very bad turning of the boys there. They're not around there yet. They just fouled up that turn completely, and I think pretty well blew the race. They were running a pretty close second there for a while in the Blue Peter, but they just blew their chances on the turning of the boys, and they're just leaving the boys now, probably 8 boat lengths behind the Viking with the Smith-Stockley crew, and just turning the boys right now, the Bell Island crew in the Native, again, well back. It looks like a runaway race once again for Smith-Stockley and the Viking. We'll take a quick break and return with more coverage of Regatta 81 on VOCM.
Gulf Kennedy and Associates.
Stockley, the official time, 9:15.72. 9 minutes, 15.72 seconds. Smith-Stockley rowing in the Viking. Jim Ring, Sr., the coxswain. Randy Ring, the stroke. John Barrington, Tom Power, Brian Cranford, Bill Hallwell, and Paul Ring. And they received perhaps the most enthusiastic burst of applause I've heard in the many, many years of covering the regatta here at Lakeside Kitty Vitty. The most enthusiastic support from the crowd. A round of spontaneous cheering and applause broke out as they crossed the finish line. I guess every second pair of eyes is watching that big electronic clock at the boathouse, and every other pair of eyes is watching that crew as they cross the finish line. So we have just within the seconds of the official record time that goes back to 1901, rowed by that legendary Outer Cove crew. The experts say that we may not see as good a time rowed in the championship race tonight, but if pond conditions remain as good as they are, we may see some...
And margarine in St. John's. Make eating more enjoyable. Use Good Luck Margarine.
Like our earlier two races today, where we could pretty well predict the winner as they left the boys, this looks like a three-boat race with the Star of the Sea and the native St. John's Building Supplies and the Kitty Vitty and the East End Boys Club on the Blue Peter, bringing up the rear, and I don't know if they're entirely out of the race yet because they're really hanging in. There's the Avalon Mall West in the Viking, and it looks like a very interesting race as they approach Rick Wyman at mid-pond.
Thanks very much, Dave Wheeler. As it stands right now, it looks like Star of the Sea in the native out on top, but it's a very slim margin. St. John's Building Supplies in the Kitty Vitty second right now. Third place, East End Boys Club in the Blue Peter third, and a distant fourth, it's Avalon Mall West in the Viking. Almost near the halfway point. Going home, that is a stretch run. Very, 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 very important. A good turn at the boys for both St. John's Building Supplies and Star of the Sea. So it looks like Star of the Sea right now building up just a slight lead, have a boat length at least over St. John's Building Supplies. Star of the Sea coxed by Bill Clark. The stroke is Gerald Keogh, Bert Hickey, Ken Power, Brian Mulcahy, Pat Power, Steve Power, and the spare is Joe Power. At the halfway point going home, it's Star of the Sea right now in the native. It's a slight lead, just about a boat length right now, and they're going home, and we'll have more coverage of this race and other races live from Kitty Vitty in just one moment.
It's the third annual Little Brown Truck Sale at Regatta Ford. Regatta Ford has over 100 1981 F-100 pickups, and they're selling at $800 off the factory list price. All trucks are medium brown in color and equipped with heavy-duty package and oversized tires. Choose from 6 or 8-cylinder models. Come on in and drive yourself a deal. Save $800 off the factory list price on a 1981 F-100 pickup in the Little Brown Truck Sale.
Down the stretch run, it's still Star of the Sea in the native, building up a bigger lead right now over St. John's Building Supplies in the Kitty Vitty. Third place, East End Boys Club in the Blue Peter, and the Viking, Avalon Mall West, the fourth entry right now, but it's a 1-2 race. Star of the Sea just ahead of St. John's Building Supplies in this district race, the third race of the day, and I don't think the time, Dave Bonder, will be as impressive as we had earlier this morning, but nevertheless, still a very good race between two very fine crews right now. Stake number 4, it's Star of the Sea, and stake number 3, St. John's Building Supplies, and they're heading towards your direction, Dave. You'll have a better vantage point from now on in.
Okay, Rick, it is a rather slow race. We'll just check our unofficial stopwatch, about 8:30 at the moment, 8 minutes 30 seconds, and we've still got maybe 35, 40 boat lengths to go. It may be a slower time, but it certainly is one of the closer races of the day as far as the first and second finishes are going to be. We would pretty well have to give it to the favorites, the Star of the Sea, representing Central St. John.
Your Gulf Home Comfort agent. Call 722-8474.
Rick Wyman back at Bondside once again in this police, fireman, wardens race. The 11 o'clock race, it got underway just a shade later than expected with only 2 competitors. St. John's firefighters opening up a big lead right now. They're coxed by Mike Power. The stroke is Mike Hickey, also on the crew. Tom Smith, Ern Howell, Dale Foote, Len Hillier, Ben Crawley, the spares, Wayne Abbott, and Gerald Hiscock. Building up a very big lead right now, and I'm sure that as Dave Wheeler can attest over Her Majesty's Penitentiary in the Blue Peter right now, it looks as if it's just a matter of time for the St. John's firefighters. Once again, we have to stress that, Dave, as the winds begin to pick up and they're moving gradually from the bottom of the pond, that the time, I'm sure in this race and many others throughout the day, if the prevailing winds continue at this pace, will be somewhat slower than we had earlier this morning, near perfect pond conditions.
That's true, Rick. We are getting a bit of a change in the wind right here. They are approaching the boys. It's still a 2-boat race. There's no doubt about that. I think it's going to be a crucial turning of the boys, and we'll be back with that right after this word.
Newfoundlanders who appreciate good taste, appreciate Good Luck margarine, found in groceries, eat fresh daily, especially for you and your family. Good Luck and good eating.
Okay, as they turn the boys now, it's the St. John's firefighters. A nice tight turn. It looks like they're going to maintain the lead that they picked up there about mid-pond, and they're headed up the pond now just as the penitentiary is turning the buoy. And a very nice turn, too, for Her Majesty's Penitentiary crew in the Blue Peter. A little slow, but nice and tight. It's very important when you're taking that buoy that you swing around very tightly And some of these crews have that down pat. They spend a lot of time practicing, and others just sort of flay their way around and make a big wide swing around the buoy. And quite often a race is won or lost on the turning of these buoys at the bottom of the pond. It's a two-boat race, but I would certainly right now give a large edge to the St. John's firefighters in the Viking. The coxswain wearing the red jacket there as they head up the pond now. It looks like about 3 or 4 boat lengths lead from my vantage point. We'll take a quick break and return with our coverage of the Police Fireman Wardens race on VOCM.
It's the 3rd annual Little Brown Truck Sale at Regatta Ford. Regatta Ford has over 100 1981 F100 pickups, and they're selling at $800 off the factory list price. All trucks are medium brown in color and equipped with heavy-duty package and oversized tires. Choose from 6 or 8-cylinder models. Come on in and drive yourself a deal. Save $800 off the factory list price on a 1981 F100 pickup for the Little Brown Truck Sale.
The Police Fireman Wardens race right now. Of course, the Royal Newfoundland Constabulary, for some reason, has been scratched from this race. The St. John's firefighters and the Viking with a fairly commanding lead. Looks like those boys are on their way to a fire. And, of course, Her Majesty's Penitentiary crew in the Blue Peter in second and last place as they approach Rick Wyman's vantage point at mid-pond. Rick?
Well, thanks very much, Dave. Unofficially right now, I have a clocking of 7 minutes and 19 seconds as they approach the midpoint part. And it looks like St. John's firefighters well on their way to victory in this.
With the energy being expended by the oarsmen each time they push those oars down the prow of the boat, that narrow little jib with the green flag on top seems to lift perceptibly from the water. And we can not tell right now if there's any kind of a substantial lead, although if there is one, it would certainly have to go to the Smith-Stockley crew. They've made this practice run. They've been training for it for just about a year. Of course, most of these boys are experienced oarsmen. They've been rowing this pond for a goodly number of years, goodly number of seasons. They know exactly how to expend their energy so that they'll have just enough left to make the maximum possible time, the fastest possible time, as they come back to the boys in, let's hope, less than 9 minutes, 13 and 45 seconds from when they left. And when they left was just a minute and a half ago. So with the club race well underway now, we're about 1:36 into the race, and at this particular point, we'll go down to mid-pond where, what's his face?
Well, Dave Monder, I think we've got the makings of a very fine race right now. It's the native crew, Smith-Stockley out in front. It's stake number 3. Second is Star of the Sea in the Viking. And they're 1-2 right now, heading toward the midway point at Pondside once again. And this is shaping up to be just a dandy race. A lot of people were saying just prior to this race that if a crew is going to be able to push Smith-Stockley, it was going to be either Star of the Sea or St. John's Building Supplies. They're past the halfway point right now, and it's still Smith-Stockley in the native, just a shade, half a boat, maybe even less, ahead of Star of the Sea in the Viking right now, 3rd place and way off out of contention at this time. St. Pat's in the Kitty Vitty. We'll have more from Lakeside in just a moment.
Nobody knows more about boating than Charles R. Bell Limited. And this year they'd like you to look over the beautiful 16.4-foot bow rider Peterborough. You'll notice the sleek action of the Peterborough all day at Kitty Vitty. It's powered by the trim, silent, stingy Johnson 90 horsepower outboard with refinements to make sure you get more economical starting and running power. What an enjoyable way to travel on the water this summer. Get more details at Charles R. Bell Limited, Kenmount Road.
As they're heading down past the midway point right now, it's still pretty close between Star of the Sea and Smith-Stockley at this time. Smith-Stockley in the native, of course, in the 3rd stake, and once again the 2nd stake position. Star of the Sea in the Viking, and once again out of contention, as I mentioned before, it's St. Patrick's in the Kitty Vitty. From this vantage point, it still looks very close. I'd have to give the edge at this time to Smith-Stockley in the native. It's almost impossible to detect from this angle. We'll have to wait until they approach the boys, and Dave Wheeler's vantage point, even though he's at a distance right now, could be able to at least describe the angle, as so to speak. Dave, perhaps your angle is much better than mine right now, but it still looks very close at this time.
It is certainly a 3-boat race at this point in time, Rick. As they approach the boys, we'll be watching that very important turn. Right after this word, back to Regatta 81.
Getting away with a friend or two, taking the day to spend with you. Every minute has some good times, and now they're rolling your way.
we're back now. It's a three-boat race, and we definitely want to award the lead here right now to the St. John's Boys and Girls Club of the Smith-Stockley Screw, to the team in the native with the green jacket, turning the boys right now. Very important now. They're approaching that. I've got 4 minutes, 30 seconds as they turn into the boy. It's a little loose. They've swung out a bit. They need themselves room, but it's a nice turn. Could have been a little tighter. It was much the same as the turn they made in the last race, I would think, as it seemed to me from my vantage point. And certainly not to be left out of the race at this time is the Star of the Sea crew in the Viking. They're holding tight. The native with the Smith-Stockley crew have no more than a half a boat length lead. And now approaching the boys, we have the St. Patrick's crew and the Kitty Vitty, I say, pretty well out of contention at this point, and 10 to 15 boat lengths behind the leaders. But right now it is a two-boat race. A slight edge for the native with the St. John's Boys and Girls Club, with Smith-Stockley rowing, and of course followed very tightly by the Star of the Sea crew and the Viking. Before we turn things over to Rick Wyman, we'll go back to our VOCM studios and continue with our coverage of the club race after this.
I'm in love with Mary Brown. Mary Brown. Mary Brown's got the best legs in town. Mary Brown, best legs in town. Come in and try her chicken, and you'll come on back for more and more and more. And I'm in love with Mary Brown. Mary Brown, best legs in town. Yes, I'm in love.
Okay, 6 minutes now into the club race, and it's still a slight lead for the St. John's Boys and Girls Club in the native with Smith-Stockley rowing. And the boys, everybody on the pond is watching today, followed very closely by Star of the Sea and the Viking, and St. Patrick's and the Kitty Vitty bringing up the rear and pretty well out of contention. That's the way it looks to me as they approach your vantage point, Rick Wyman.
Dave Wheeler, you couldn't have asked for a better race to kick off the afternoon. The club race, it's race number 7 of the day, and it looks like the St. John's Boys and Girls Club Smith-Stockley still out in front. They picked up maybe a half, maybe a full-length lead right now. It's still very close over the Star of the Sea in the Viking. As I mentioned before, Smith-Stockley in the native at stake 3, and Star of the Sea at the Viking at stake number 2, way out of contention. St. Pat's and the Kitty Vitty. It's so close, Dave. Not even a half a boat length right now as Smith-Stockley with Cox James. Ring Sr. certainly crewing very well in this race. Pond conditions almost ideal, and they're at the halfway point going home. It's Smith-Stockley. It's still very close at this time. Not even a length of a full boat at this time. Star of the Sea still in second place with their Cox, Bill Clark in the Viking. Third place, Kitty Vitty, St. Pat's, they're out of contention. Star of the Sea pressing Smith-Stockley right now, the St. John's Boys and Girls Club, as the seconds tick away. Certainly a fine race, and Star of the Sea certainly making a big challenge to overtake Smith-Stockley at this time. We'll have the conclusion at this race right after this message.
At the regatta this year, you'll note
right now Star of the Sea and St. John's Boys and Girls Club Smith-Stockley, and of course in the native at stake number 3, Star of the Sea and the Viking at stake number 2, still very close at this time. It could be Smith-Stockley, it could be Star of the Sea out in front right now. From this vantage point at midpoint, it looks very difficult. Hopefully, Dave, you'll be able to give us a better vantage point.
Well, I think it's still the Smith-Stockley crew, but certainly not by very much, and the effect of the Star of the Sea being so close behind during this entire race may be the pacing incentive needed to knock a few precious seconds off that earlier time this morning. We're at the 8:38 mark right now with about maybe 15 or 20 boat lengths to go, so we may very well see another very close to record time here at this race, the club race. Really, although 3 boats entered, it's really a two-boat contest. Still very close, less than a boat length apart as they come within seconds of the finish line. 8:56 the time. The crowd is beginning to roar. You can hear them count down. They can see that giant electronic clock in the boathouse. These guys are putting everything they can to save a couple of precious fractions of a second off the time. 9:08 with a boat length to go. It's 9:10. There's the gun. Now we're going to have to wait for the official time. And in this particular point, they're just about falling out of the boat, jumping over each other, congratulating each other. The crowd is going wild. I think we've got ourselves a record time. And on the electronic clock at the boathouse, we can see it up there, 9 minutes, 12.04 seconds. Officially, 9:12.04. So they have done it. For the first time in 80 years, we've seen that record that some of the old-timers said was a mistake. Nobody ever rode the course in 9:13.
Would you believe it?
Incredible.
Oh, golly. We've just seen a piece of history that nobody has seen for 80 years, guys. And it's been witnessed by, us and about 25,000 or so people here, and of course, many, many thousands of people listening on the VOCM radio service. Now you can hear it. Just incredible enthusiasm and applause for these tired but deliriously, they're walking ashore. They've gotten out of the...
That was history in the making, right here in front of you.
There were, I've just seen maybe half a dozen men from the crowd just walked out in the water, waist deep, clothes and all on, so they could shake the hands of these guys whose names will be in the record books of the oldest and perhaps most colorful sporting event in North America. Still, we're getting a great round of applause from the crowd. Just crossing the finish line now. They kind of missed all the excitement. That's the St. Patrick's boys into Kitty Fitty, and I think they know what's happened. They can tell by the reaction from the crowd here at the head of Kitty Fitty Lake what's happened. There goes a Newfoundland dog. A big black Newfoundland dog. He's swimming out to the boat to add his own personal congratulations and maybe a few licks on the hands of this championship crew. There's that official time still proudly displayed on the boathouse electronic sign in great big bright letters for thousands to see. 9 minutes, 12.04 seconds.
Dave, it should be interesting to note that Star of the Seas time, of course, they pressed them right from start to finish. They made it so close for them, perhaps giving them incentive for the St. John's Boys and Girls Club Smith Stockley. And once again, it's unfortunate that at this time that we can't get an accurate timing of their second place finish, but they couldn't have finished by very much.
Well, I'm sure they had chased Outer Cove back in 1901.
Right you are. I'm sure that they've kept a stopwatch on the Star of the Sea crew as well. And it's sure going to be interesting to see what their time is, because they were so close, certainly no more than half a boat length, if that, behind the winning Smith Stockley crew, that their time may very well have been under that magic 9:13 and 4/5 mark as well. So we may have seen two independent smashings of that 80-year record.
Well, it takes a good team to chase a good team. I think they draw inspiration from each other, and they obviously did.
Absolutely.
Those teams turned the boys. The Smith Stockley crew did hold a slight lead all the way, but only slight, never more than a boat length. And that Star of the Sea crew just kept right tight to the bow, right up the pond, around the boys, and it was just a fantastic race.
Well, the Smith Stockley crew, of course, are the victors, but a lot of the credit goes to the Star of the Sea for just keeping the pressure on without letting up for 1 second.
I was concerned as they turned the boys there, as I mentioned earlier, that it looked a little loose. It was quite similar to the turn they'd made before, which most of our pondside experts agreed had cost them a second or two.
Well, I think the fact that the pond conditions seem to get even better. We said they were ideal at the start of the race. They've settled down now. The water is almost to a glassy calm now, perhaps a little too calm, but at the moment, when they, in those final precious seconds when they wanted to get in there at the finish line under 9:13 and 4/5, pond conditions were just about perfect, as good as I've ever seen. And people are still shouting and talking and blowing horns and really beginning to realize now that what they've seen is something that has not been seen on the historic old Kitty Fitty Lake for more than 80 years.
Well, the original event has become a legend. Some people even disbelieving that it had actually occurred or that it could even be physically done.
No, I think the crowd senses there's been a legend start here today.
Let alone happen in the club race. I think people were expecting this to happen in the championship races later on this evening.
Right. Now, Rick Wyman, you're in perhaps a better position because the Smith Stockley boys are just about back at the boathouse, and there goes the crowd. We can see people just crushing to get to the jetty side because they want to get a look firsthand at these guys. And perhaps if you pick up your binoculars and take a look, there go the flash bulbs, and you can possibly looks like somebody else jumped in the water. There's somebody swimming out now.
I'm sure it's going to be difficult for these boys to restrain themselves from over-celebrating. They still have a championship race to face.
Well, they'll never get through this crowd for a long time. Anyway, Rick, let's go down to you for a minute to see what you can see from your vantage point, which is a bit closer to the boathouse.
It's complete mayhem down at the boathouse. I think they simply just want to go up to maybe even touch a bit of history right now with the Smith Stockley crew, the St. John's Boys and Girls Club. They're all milling around the boat, and it's difficult to see any members of the actual crew out on the dock at this time, but history in the making. People just want to get close and offer their congratulations and fine Newfoundland hospitality. They're certainly showing their pleasure at seeing history in the making, a record time. And I have to say, from my experience, being at a regatta for the first time and coming here and seeing an 80-year tradition go by the wayside, it certainly makes my day as far as the 1981 regatta is concerned. How about that?
Congratulations to you.
Dave, they're still milling about over there, as far as I can tell from at the boathouse from this vantage point. Once again, everyone is simply ecstatic and trying to offer their congratulations in some way, shape, or form. So hopefully we'll have the rings back in the championship race later on this evening.
Well, there'll be some pretty impressive celebration, that's for sure, as well as presentations. Of course, the gold medals, the cash awards, the fame, your place made in history. And each of these men in this Smith-Stockley crew, coxed by Jimmy Ring Sr. and, of course, stroke Randy Ring, John Barrington, Tom Power, Brian Cranford, Bill Hallwell, and Paul Ring. Those are the names that will carry on down possibly for the next 80 years of Newfoundland history.
Well, Dave, I can't forget to mention, I was just talking to one of the individuals involved in some of the donations as far as actual cash is concerned. Don't forget, the winning Smith-Stockley crew will be awarded the Lord Warden Gold Medals in a couple of weeks' time at a special ceremony. $5,000 comes from the city merchants. Jack Harding tossed in $1,000 last week. Jack Harding's Trucking, and Friar Tuck's English Pub last night, another $500, so that's not too bad for, let's say, under 10 minutes of work. Total of $6,500 in cash, plus the gold medals, which I'm sure are valued well over $10,000. Who knows, the value keeps on going up, so certainly well worth it for this Smith-Stockley crew.
Well, those are the tangible things, of course, but the intangible is the fact that they have just been, made history in front of all these people, and the enthusiasm that went through the crowd was just incredible. You could sense it. You knew it was going to happen. With 10 or 12 seconds left to go in the race, you knew that they were going to cross that finish line in less than 9:13 4/5, and they've still got that 9:12.04 on that big electronic sign, still displaying it proudly. And I'm not quite sure what's happening, whether they managed to get out of the boat, out of the racing shell, and get ashore. But no doubt the celebrations, the spontaneous celebrations that are happening in the boathouse right now will maybe delay for a little while the rest of the afternoon schedule. We don't give a darn. They can delay it all they want, because we've just seen a piece of history that makes us all very, very proud to be a part of.
When you're measuring time in tenths of a second, these boys have actually chopped 1 1/5 seconds off of this, which doesn't seem like a lot, I suppose, in regular terms. But when you're measuring in tenths of a second, that is an impressive win. Not only did they break the record, but they did it soundly.
Well, I hate to break up this conversation for something as mundane as a commercial right now, but we have to drop one in before we give a wrap-up of the historic club race that we've just seen and heard here on VOCM this afternoon. So back in just a moment.
Heating fuels, something most...
Chevy Blazer got goose pimples like I did, and once they got out of the boat, the crowd sort of left where they came in. We're waiting for the boys to arrive. Then they went. When the boys went inside, they're outside, they're cheering. It's unbelievable, the excitement of the Smith-Stockley crew coming up with 9:12.04. So I think that's about all I can tell you from here, Dave. And another thing we noticed, so before going to you, when they did cross the finish line, I imagine you noticed also quite a few of the people going out, right out in the pond to shake their hands. So we'll go back to you, Dave.
Okay, there's a few wet souls up this end of the pond. They just walked out in the water, closing all on because they wanted to be the first to shake the hands of this championship crew. Anyway, the club race is history. Smith-Stockley winning it in a record time, a new record, 9:12.04. And, of course, a lot of credit to the Star of the Sea Association crew, because they were the ones who stayed right on their heels with never less than a boat length behind, and they were the ones who gave them the added incentive to do this historic bit of oarsmanship here at Kitty Vitty this afternoon. The next race is the labor race with a full slate of 4 crews. I'll be back along with Dave Wheeler and Rick Wyman for coverage of that next at about 2:30, right here on 590 VOCM.
Stay tuned to 590 VOCM for continuing live coverage of the St. John's Regatta, live from Kitty Vitty Lake. Brought to you by Lighting World.